Can pride in one's culture or country become a bad thing, or is it always a good thing?
I think it can turn into a bad thing. I think it's good to have pride for, um, your roots, your backgrounds. But I always see pride with, for example, I have pride in my family, and I know like those people like worked hard to keep the family going. However, I feel like if it comes to a system, or maybe a country as a whole, I think um, maybe being prideful in a government can make you feel a sense of superiority over someone else instead of trying to um, just appreciating what's unique about someone's culture. I think we can, if we focus on culture as a whole, you can find similarities with other people that you may have not realized. Like, for example, I have a Latin background, but I have a lot of like little cultural aspects that I end up relating to with a Filipino person, which I find very cool because we're on completely different sides of the world, but we have our own individual histories that make us different, as opposed to like, oh, I think like like the military is the strongest in Peru, which I don't. But I think just in general, appreciating the little things in life and including culture can help bring people together and help people appreciate each other, as opposed to, I think, general statements like this culture or this country is the best can lead to misunderstanding and people not trying to look further into understanding one another. Yes. Yeah, I think specificity is important. It leads to I think it leads to more direct conversation and less, misinterpretation, or like it's easy to say like I hate this thing as opposed to I think um, this detail is wrong and how can we fix it or how can we learn to understand each other.
So, pride in someone's country is a good thing. You come here or you live here because you share the same ideas. I don't think pride can turn into a bad thing, but I think ideas can turn into a bad thing. Certain ideas can be drawn along and then get traction. We've seen that in history, so definitely ideas, not pride.
Yeah, it can 100% be a bad thing. If you see what's happening here, I mean, I think on either end, when anything gets to an extreme, it can become dangerous. And especially with patriotism, if you look at what happened in Europe the past century, right? If you look at other incidents in Latin America in the past century as well, pride in anything can be dangerous if it's taken to an extreme.
I think it's a balance because I think if you're too prideful, it can turn into like a prejudice against other people. But I think if you have a good amount of pride in it, you're willing to accept other cultures and other, their way of life as well.
Okay, so I think when the United States was culminated back in 1776, it was about freedom, cultural equality, and stuff like that. The entire point of the country was so that people could spread their culture and everything around, and without fear of hate or anything. So I think it's a great thing that people are coming to America to spread their culture so that we can learn more, and then they can learn more about us, and then thus America's reputation will increase, and then more people will come, more people will spread their pride, everything like that. Specifically, people who have been, put down for their entire lives, basically, kind of like traditionally, people from the continent of Africa, they have not been treated very well by white Westerners, right? But if people native to Africa come here, help spread their religion and stuff like that, maybe we can learn more about their past, and we can, you know, we'll still have to remember the bad times so that we can teach it to our future generations. But at least we can try to forgive and forget, basically. So another thing, the most important part about bringing culture here is that the culture must live on here as well, because we don't want culture to just die out. We want to remember it and then pass it on to generations so that we can all learn in some way about these cultures. Sometimes they might have values that might be important to us, and I think that's important to keep.
No, yo creo que es bueno conocer otras culturas, pero uno siempre extraña cultura o sea, de ser latino, pero o sea, es bueno conocer otro tipo de culturas, otros países, otra gente. Pues, o sea, siempre uno lleva ahí las raíces ahí por dentro, pero siempre, ya sea la persona de Canadá o de cualquier país, hay que respetar sus raíces de ellos. Claro, o sea, yo no sé inglés, mucho sé poquito, pero he ido a festivales así musicales de donde llegan de Canadá, de Costa Rica, de Inglaterra, y todos tratan, o sea, de convivir.
I'm not quite sure it turned into something bad. I think it can grow to where you're arrogant for your country. And so, you know, it's my country is not better than your country. Our way of thinking dominates your way of thinking. And so, if it's not tamed properly, it can turn into something that's hazardous. And that happens. It happens a lot, quite honestly. You know, sometimes if you're American, you might think that people in the Middle East think a certain way, or they dress a certain way, or their religion is a certain way. You know, religion is just one aspect, but the way they dress, the way they speak, their food, you know, all that. And so if you have that mindset to where that other country or that culture is inferior than yours, yeah, then that's hazardous.
Well, pride itself, I think, is not a bad thing. I think that what you do with those emotions of your pride is what should be judged at the end of the day, because actions speak louder than words. And I think that I personally am very wary of anybody who takes their emotions or beliefs into the most extreme form of that. So I don't think it's inherently a bad thing, but I would just caution people to, you know, be a little bit more open-minded about themselves as well as others. So that's how I feel. And I think that having pride in your nation or your family line or anything like that, I think that is just shows like the human condition. I think that having pride in like how your family has overcome something or how your people have overcome something is a totally normal human function. But if you start using that to elevate yourself and oppress others, then I think that's when it becomes a very dangerous, nationalist, aggressive type of pride. It's like there's like two sides to it.
I think there's definitely times where it can be a bit much. I think it's really important just to be open to other people and their cultures, and once you just understand it and appreciate it, like, and everybody's happy, I think that's fine. But I think, yeah, in the worst of times, that's when, you know, people get a little too patriotic and stuff, and that can be a bit much. So I think it's important just to, you know, keep it all within reason and be proud of your own country and know that other people are proud of their countries too. And that's most important. Nobody's better than anybody else. You know, we're all just trying to live out here. So yeah, I think knowing where you are and stuff and the people who are around you and stuff. But yeah, be proud, but also respectful of other people.
Be a good thing, because you can just see like how much they love their culture, and like you get to experience like how they feel for their culture looking at them, like from their perspective. So it's a good thing. I don't know if it can be bad in a way. They're just like loving like where they came from and just showing it that way.
I mean, I think the most prominent example of where nationalism goes too far is like the Second Reich, right? Mm-hmm. You know, they didn't even question when you have a dictator, right? And they actually believe in the dictator. That's kind of when it becomes a problem, especially if the malicious intent of that dictator is to persecute Jews or a certain group of people. So I wouldn't say that nationalism is a bad thing. Actually, I think it's very much a standard that we need to hold. And then once you lose nationalism in a country, the country just kind of stands alone. There's no country left, you know? Like, we are the 50 United States, right? The united part is that nationalism part. We need to stand on a united front, whatever issue it is. And though we might have divides within the country, like Republicans, Democrats, right? It only helps to strengthen that nationalism, or at least it should tend in that direction.
People like hold on to that, like, okay, this is my culture and I don't really care about anything else. But a lot of people come from anywhere, and they'll have pride for, you know, wherever they come from. They come from El Salvador, they'll be El Salvadorian, and they'll have pride for their country and wherever. But that can coexist with your other culture, religion, your political beliefs, where you come from. All these things can coexist, and so yeah, I think outliers, like anything, it can turn into a problem, but not typically. I think when you start closing discussion and getting, when that's your end all be all, right? You can't listen to anybody else's opinion or their outlook on life. That's when it's like, okay, like if I can't accept somebody coming from somewhere else and I'm from America, it's like that becomes a problem. Because that's just a fact of life that people are gonna migrate. That's been happening since the inception of humankind.
Does the US have a culture? What do you think?
I wouldn't say it has a single culture. Doesn't really depend on race. It just pretty much depends on where you live, and it can change. Like with the example of Central Virginia versus Northern Virginia, it doesn't just depend on state. It depends on where you are in the state. And I would say that most of the U.S. is probably like that. So I think it's usually a good thing. In situations like nationalism, that's where it gets out of hand. But other than that, I don't think there's anything wrong with being proud of where you're from. Yeah, if you want to go into somebody else's area, I guess, and try to take that over, that's where the line is crossed. But other than that, I don't think it's bad.
It's mainly just mixed up of a variety of people here. I would say there's not as many immigrants coming over if you compare it to like a decade ago. So it's getting a lot more. I guess you could pinpoint it to a specific type, but in general, it's just a variety of cultures just mixed up around here. You got people from all over the world just coming over here and growing up. You know, the amount of colors that and people I've seen in school and whatnot, just even the place I work, yeah, it's quite a variety.
So it's honestly a yes and no question. We have the culture, but with so many people coming in from different countries, it kind of becomes convoluted, it becomes muddy. So I do believe America has a culture. To describe it, it's all over the place. I can't really describe it in a sense, but I mean, I feel like everybody comes here to pursue their dreams in a sense. So it's all kind of that same mindset, that same culture of people, very entrepreneurial. But past that, yeah, it's very convoluted, muddied.
I don't really think they do. It's such a melting pot that it seems like all the cultures just kind of meld together and come together, which I think can be beautiful in itself. I think it's a neat thing, not having just one culture. I mean, I do because going to Thailand and different places, it's neat to see how cultured they are and what they do, but I kind of like it here too, where it's a melting pot and you get varied cultures mixed throughout the nation. That's pretty cool too. Transform into its own culture kind of keeps adapting and becoming something else, which is cool.
I wouldn't say we just have one culture. It's just so diverse that everyone just blends in with each other and everybody just loves each other. I feel as though when you come to the U.S., it's a good thing because it's different. So it's like if you're from somewhere else, of course everyone's going to embrace where somebody else is from because it's you embracing your culture. So it's like everyone's going to enjoy what you bringing in, but just because it's different.
I mean, I guess the American culture would be taking things for granted. You know what I mean? Like, most Americans have never been outside the country, so they don't really know what people go through and things like that. So I would say a lot of people in America are sheltered because they don't know really what's going on. They see things on the news and stuff like that, but never have actually seen it firsthand. So yeah, I would think American culture is, just, they have everything they could ever want out here, so they take it for granted. Out there in other countries, not everybody has everything they need, so everything they get is all the more precious. You know what I mean? Out here, nothing's really precious because it's everywhere. I mean, anybody can go anywhere and order something on their phone and get whatever they want, whatever that may be, or go down the street and get what they want, but out there it's a lot harder, a lot more difficult. Yeah.
Culture, no. I would say it doesn't have a specific culture because culture is built around the other cultures that came and evolved into what is here today. But culture is always evolving, so specific culture, not really. But a way of life, I would say, I could argue a way of life rather than culture. Culture is more built over generations and generations, but newer generations will change, and that means they won't have a set culture. So, being a Western country, America has the ability to change on a dime if the people want it. and that's really important because we need what the people want. And maybe in the past, maybe in the 1900s, 1910s, you know, you won't see an African American being a lawyer or some very high-paying job, high-level job. Now that's normal. That's something normal. You'll see that everywhere. And I think that only came about in maybe 1960s, 1970s after progress movements were made. So only 50 years ever since that happened. So we still have a lot of time before we can set something up for a new culture.
You know, that's a great question. I think that the US is so unique in the realm of culture because just of how it was for so long, this like melting pot of diversity, which is so cliche to say. That's what they always say in like your 7th grade history class. But I think it's so unique because our culture is having a lot of cultures, and it's kind of like you find all these like fusion sort of like places and like atmospheres, and I think that that's inherently what American culture is, and unfortunately some Americans are not too open to that, but I think that's what makes us really like unique in comparison to a lot of other places, because we've had such wide berth of like immigration to the nation that has impacted socially on all levels.
In my opinion, I think just based on what this country is built on, freedom of religion, you know, everyone has their own unique culture, and that in it of itself is kind of a culture, you know, of being unique individuals that aren't forced into doing one religion, one specific idealism or anything like that, other than the fact that we live in a democracy, right? I mean, I guess if you want to call that culture. So I think, yeah, just the idea of all the cultures combined being one unanimous culture. The idea of not being afraid to practice whatever religion you want, you know, like being an atheist compared to being a Christian, compared to being a Muslim, you know, and obviously Muslims are a little bit more persecuted in the country than they obviously should be, have any right to be. You know, no one should be persecuted for the religion. Probably still roots in 9/11, stuff like that. But the idea that you still could practice that and not be thrown in jail tomorrow, you know, that kind of thing.
No idea. Think of America, what would you think of? Red, white, and blue, and bald eagle, and greasy foods.
Oh, God.
I don't think it does, because I feel like if there were to be a culture in America, we're very individualistic. I think we have a very like hustle mindset, and everyone is kind of like, people think freedoms mean freedoms for myself, how I can get what I want, and that can be a good thing when it comes to pushing yourself to reach your goals and accomplishing what you want to in life. But I feel like the sort of multiple backgrounds aspect, through those backgrounds you have people who have a sense of community, but I don't know if we have a sense of community as a whole as a country as maybe other nations or other cultures do.
I think the US does have a culture. It's kind of like a conglomerated culture, but we do have a culture. It sometimes gets kind of obscured because everybody's from their own area, to be honest. There's a lot of meshing. So maybe developing, but also I feel like we do have our own culture. I think that generally it's a good thing. So we exist, like you can hold on to different identities and they can coexist. Sometimes it turns, you know, to extremism, but that's extremism. That's an outlier typically, right? And I think that gets magnified more than it happens.
I don't think that like the country just has its own. I feel like that the people that are in it make America's culture, like just all together.
It's a very interesting question. I don't think it's a set culture. I think it's a melting pot. It's a mixed. It has many different cultures mixed into one. Because the United States was founded upon a different way. Most people here are either immigrants or they were enslaved people, such as my ancestors. And so culture is mixed. And depending on where you go within the country, you see different cultures. I don't think there's one set culture, but there's different sets of cultures around the whole country. So if you go to New York City, for instance, that's a whole separate culture than if you go here in DC, or if you're in Atlanta, or even in California or Chicago. And the music is different, the way you dress is different, the food is even different in many cases. And so, it's a variety. But it's good though. Mixture is great. Variety is good to be in the country. If it's just one set culture, I'm not quite sure that would be interesting.
So people are typically asking me and trying to figure out where I'm from. I don't get offended by it. I actually think it's kind of funny. I am from the US, but my parents are from a different country. I wanted to see if you could try to guess what country they're from. I'll only give 3 guesses, and I can't give any hints.
Oh, this is tough.
No.
If it's not the Middle East, I'd be shocked.
I would say somewhere probably maybe in the Middle East.
Persian.
Iran.
Iran.
Yeah, Iran,
Iran.
Afghanistan.
Afghanistan,
We'll just do Pakistan.
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 Morocco.
Egypt.
Egypt.
Egyptians.
You look a lot like my friend from Israel.
Israel?
Israel.
Palestine.
Lebanon.
Syria.
Qatar.
Iraq.
Saudi Arabia.
Sudan.
Greece.
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 Turkish.
Turkey?
Turkey.
Or like Turkey.
Based on your name, right? Nico, kind of, I guess, curlyish hair. I'm gonna say Italian.
Italy.
He said his name was Nico. That sounds very Italian.
I'm gonna play the wild card, Canada.
Brazil.
New Zealand.
I want to say the UK.
British.
Bulgaria.
Serbia.
Serbia.
Oh my gosh, Romania.
Romania?
Romania.
Okay, so the first thing I was thinking of was Czechia.
Slovakia?
No.
No. No. No. No. No.
Okay, well, the way you're saying no, now it makes me think you speak Spanish. Like Panama?
Argentino,
Maybe Mexico.
Peru.
peruano,
Spanish.
Spain.
uruguayo.
Try not to profile you. That's the thing.
What do you think? Give me an answer.
Nombre de Nicaragua.
Oh my god!
Wow. Somewhere I didn't even care to look. That's crazy.
Oh.
Oh!
I
was
was like,
that's
so
so bad.
What? Wait, what? Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It was a no.
Nicaragua.
Oh, Nicaragua.
Nicaragua. Okay.
Nicaragua?
Yeah.
Wow. I could not see that.
Oh, de Nicaragua. Oh my God.
Nicaragua? So you're Hispanic?
Yeah.
Oh, see, I wouldn't have guessed that. See, man?
I have not heard of that.
Really?
No.
Oh, okay. So whereabouts is that? Like, how far away from here?
Nicaragua. Where?
In Nicaragua. So, there's the U.S. You
Yeah.
have Mexico.
Yeah, Mexico. Yeah.
Guatemala,
Yeah, Guatemala.
Honduras, and then Nicaragua, and then Costa Rica.
Ah, yeah. I see. Wow.
There's so few Nicaraguans that I've met. Like, I think I've only met one in the past. It's like saying you're like Panamanian, you know? Like, I wouldn't have a clue that you were that. I guess I feel like there's so few South Americans other than, you know.
But we're not South America. We're Central American.
Oh, is that still in the? Okay, yeah, it's the Central American.
It's like calling
Yeah.
a Moroccan person Middle Eastern.
Like I've brought some like friends over and their first question is like, where are you from? And when they're like, New York, they're like, no, like your heritage. And I'm like, you are so embarrassing right now.
Hairstyle and skin tone.
Yo conozco unos amigos ahí nicaragüenses, pero no son de tez blanca, son así de mi tez. La mayoría que conozco son así como yo de este color. Pero nicaragüenses de piel blanca no he conocido nicaragüenses. Pero está bien, ahí en los países así nosotros tenemos de todos colores, igual así en México. Pues hay una ciudad que se llama, Monterrey, Nuevo León, y ya muchas mujeres como que son americanas, son blancas.
I guess my assumptions, you being white, straight from Europe, right? Yeah, but Nicaragua, I never could have guessed that.
I was going Middle Eastern because you do kind of look like the facial structure. You got like the strong jaw, I guess.
You look like Middle Eastern, like your face and your facial hair, and you're like, I don't know.
It's the beard and the fact that it's brown and from the black to brown.
That's the way you talk. You have a little bit of an accent that I hear.
It was the beard. Felt like the beard kind of threw me off.
Definitely the beard.
Yeah.
That's probably what it is. And I'm guessing the hair, because it's a little curly, just a little bit.
Because I have a friend, I have a friend from Romania who kind of looks like you. Romania isn't exactly Mediterranean, but it was near those countries.
Right, yeah.
And you seem like you have a flair, so like that's either Latin or Mediterranean. I don't know.
What's funny is that none of that crossed my mind even when I met you. Like that didn't cross my mind. I wasn't like, oh, where's he from? Like, no.
Like sometimes, you know, you can guess where a lot of people are from. But a lot of times, if I can't, I don't like to because I feel like I offend somebody by doing
Oh, no,
that.
I don't get
You know, I
offended.
just the same way. I don't get offended either because I mean, I've heard so many things. You know, so many people try to guess where I'm from. And, you know, I get so many different. I get East India, I get Middle Eastern, I get Arabic. You know, so it's usually people from DC that recognize I'm Ethiopian because there's so many Ethiopians out here. You know?
I've never met anybody from Nicaragua, so I mean, I don't look at people because of their race. We've definitely seen a lot of that recently where people judge because of that. With me in the business that I'm in, you can't do that. You're shunned for it. And you're just someone like me, someone walking around, and I'm not judging you for what you look like or the color of your skin.